Welcome everyone to this presentation on how to avoid food waste. Today we'll be talking about avoiding food waste in the context of shopping. And you know, I have amongst my group of friends, I have people who love shopping and I have people who would run a mile from shopping. And to be honest, I probably sit somewhere in the middle. There are days where I think, yeah, it's not too bad, a bit of retail therapy. And there are days when I think I just cannot deal with all that decision making. So I sort of get it, you know, like when you have a list of ingredients that you may need to purchase for your family, and you have to make all these decisions about, oh, place of origin, packaging, what am I cooking for their meals? It's actually quite exhausting. It's quite taxing. So this presentation today, I'm really keen to help you work through a few actions that will encourage your shopping to be many things, but one of them will be enjoyable. Of course, we can't negate all the aspects of food waste, preventing food waste as well, because that's my, you know, eternal mantra. But it needs to be not exciting, but it needs to be an experience that you don't actually need or feel like you have to run a mile from. So let's help you with those sorts of strategies. So throughout this presentation, I've got a few things to talk about props-wise. We're going to have a look at the things you need to consider before you go shopping and the things that you need to consider while you're shopping, how you package your shopping into bags to make it easier to bring it when you bring it home to unpack. So all sorts of different aspects of shopping will be covered today. But I've got to start with something that's a bit of a Kylieism. So let's have a think about this. So one of them is there are so many products when you go shopping to think about what suits your family that I'm just going to encourage you, and through all of this presentation, really important to me to be informed about your decision making. So I want you to be able to understand the implications of your actions. And then, while I don't, or I probably shouldn't say, then, you know, it doesn't worry me what you decide to do, I feel at least you're informed and you can make an informed decision and understand the implications of the actions of what you do. That's a really important part of this presentation today. Okay, so let's think about avoiding food waste. Back to our big driving force as to why we're doing all of this. Follow me through these pictures, if you will. So let's look at the little picture version of reducing food waste. So you may have seen this before if you've seen other presentations, but certainly doesn't hurt to get it in our minds again. So if we're thinking little picture, what I mean by that is what these aspects relate particularly to you and maybe your household. So you can by reducing food waste, you're going to save money. Fantastic. By reducing food waste, you're actually going to save time. You might think, how? How am I going to save time? You're going to save time because you don't need to go to the supermarket as much. You're using every item that you've purchased. And that's fantastic for both the saving money and the saving time. And just by chance, because there's a little bit more planning involved in this, you tend to find you have healthier meals. Now that's an extra added bonus. So these are great reasons to avoid food waste for you. Let's look at some reasons to avoid food waste or reduce food waste for the big picture. Yeah, so we're talking about avoiding food waste helps prevent our broken food system from being any worse than it could possibly be. If we're talking about a food system as it currently exists, in its majority, it's very lineal. So we end up purchasing something, we end up not perhaps eating or consuming or dealing with all the packaging that comes with that purchased item, and then it goes straight into waste and doesn't get reused or reapplied. Not a great way for finite resources on our planet. So a fantastic option is to think about it being a circular food system. And that's very much about avoiding food waste, reapplying and maximising those resources that you do end up with. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. That'll be a constant theme. It respects both our past generations, but it also respects the future generations. So they're going to have needs. And if we don't waste products, don't waste food in particular, their needs are much more likely to be met. And that's really important, particularly if you look at your family and your friends who have family. Okay, they're all going to have needs into the future. Let's not negate that by foolishly using resources. And this is what it's the last point I've made in this big picture aspect, is that we're better using our finite resources if we use them more than once and we make sure they're reapplied. Excellent. All right, so keep that in mind. They are our objectives. All right. So when we're shopping or gathering for food, let's see. The first thing that we need is a shopping list. And I must admit, I have looked in the supermarket at how people's behaviour, and they can have their shopping lists written on paper. They can have them on their devices. However you have your shopping list is completely what works for you. But you may, if you've seen some of our other presentations, you may have a shopping list that's come from your meal plan. And I happen to brought our meal plan today. So I'm not expecting you to read this in any other context than we have days of the week, we have meals, and down the bottom of my meal plan here is a shopping list. So I've taken all those items from that and amalgamated a list. Ta-da! In true recycling context, it happens to be on the back of some old cardboard. But that is, and that's great, because really what's going to happen to this shopping list once it's done? Well, in my world, it's going to go into my compost and help to feed my worms. But in your world, it may do the same. So it's important to consider this avoiding food waste in perhaps a bigger context. And you'll see that theme in a lot of the things I do when I reuse containers or reapply things. So this is an amalgamation of the shopping list from our meal plan, and you too can do that. That is working out quantities, it's working out all the ingredients that you've identified from the meals that you want to have. So I personally think it's really exciting to have a tangible list, because one of my pleasures in life, so small as it might be, is crossing things off my list. So exciting, I love that. So that's why I'm standing here with the texter, and that's also why I'm standing beside or near the fridge. Because now you've got your list, you might think, great, let's go shopping. No, don't go shopping just yet, because I want to encourage you to shop your pantry, shop your fridge, shop your freezer, and maybe your garden. So make sure that there's things that you have on your list that you don't already have. Like you might have a scout through your back of your pantry and find, oh my gosh, there's a sachet of tomato paste. Let's cross that one off. Don't need to buy that. Oh my gosh, we've already saved money and we've saved food, because we're not wasting that container of tomato paste that's in there. It's being used in this week's meal plan. So make sure that you shop all of those different places where food might be hiding. Maybe storing is probably, I'm not sure it deliberately goes and hides, but where it's being stored in your house. Go and have a check and see. Make sure certain that you don't actually need to buy the things. And if you don't, take great pleasure in crossing them off the list, because I know I would be. Okay, so we'll leave that there. So you've reviewed your list, you've gone through and checked. Now there's a few more decisions you need to make again before you actually go shopping. One of them is about identifying what items you've got on your list that might actually be long shelf life items. And they're typically things that might be dried, so it might be pasta, might be rice, might be dry legumes or grains, might be some tinned food. These are all considered long shelf life items. And if you've got them represented on your shopping list and you need them maybe for 2 or 3 meals, which is great meal planning because you're using one ingredient many times. I would call that a multitasker ingredient. Well done, you. But if you have that, then why buy small packets? Go for a large packet. So let me show you what I mean. Okay, so this involves mussels, but it's okay. I think I'll be able to bring those to the fore. So this packet of rice here, Australian rice, medium grain, this is a 5 kilo packet and it cost me today $8. As opposed to this packet here, which is the same product, Australian grown rice, medium grain, which is a 1 kilo packet, and that cost me $3. So to do the math on that, there's quite a bit of money difference, which is, yeah, remember if we go little picture, saves you money, but also if we go big picture, look at the less packaging. You would have 5 packets of these as opposed to one big bag that you can actually use as a rubbish bag again, and that's reapplying some resources. Okay, so as long as you've got the storage capacity, which may be some bigger containers, I think a 5 kilo bag of rice is a way better purchase as opposed to this one. You're going to save yourself quite a bit of money in that way. All right, the other, again, before we go shopping, so there's a few more strategies to think about. One of them is, what can we use in terms of minimising food waste? What ingredients might we think about swapping for being something that we can eat in its entirety as opposed to something that you might have some food scraps left over with? So maybe on our shopping list we might have pumpkin. Well, let's have a think. We've got, this is a Japanese pumpkin, and a butternut pumpkin. So if we think we go to the supermarket, you know, they're about the same price, and you think, okay, which one? Well, my suggestion would be go with the Japanese pumpkin because you can eat the skin on this pumpkin when it's roasted. You can pickle the skin on it. It pickles beautifully. It makes a nice spread. Whereas the butternut pumpkin skin is really quite tough, not so palatable, not so pleasant. So it's probably going to end up in your food scraps. That might be okay if you're making compost, but also think about this. You're buying everything of this. You're not just buying the pumpkin. You're buying all of it, the seeds, everything. So everything that you don't use, it's wasted money. It's bad for the environment. It doesn't reward our producers. So make sure that you consider which ingredient you might be able to swap for. And that might be just a really simple, easy swap. And all of a sudden, less food waste. I feel like that could be probably something I shouldn't sing. Okay, another decision making before you go shopping again is to think, do I get frozen or do I get fresh? So these are not a direct comparison because we have broccoli in this hand and no peas. But it's fairly similar. Cost-wise, to be honest, this one was on special and they probably cost about the same. So you're not going to save a whole lot of money. There probably is a few more vegetables in this one compared to when you cut this one. And you're going to end up with food scraps in this instance and no food scraps in this one. But you are going to end up with plastic packaging that you're not going to get in this way. So this is where I can't make that decision for you, but you need to make it for your household and work out what suits you. So if it's really easy for you to take something out of the freezer, saves you time. Remember, that's one of our big little picture things. If it saves you time and you've got a really good way of recycling, so you might be part of the Red Cycling program, which is soft plastic waste recycling, then you might actually be deciding to go this way. If you've got a compost bin and you actually can use the food scraps and make soil with them, that's another presentation. Don't forget to tune in for that one. That's fun. And you can make soil with them. If you've got the space to make some compost, then you might decide to go this way because everything you've purchased that you don't consume can go into the compost. Okay, so that is not a decision I can make, but it's for you, but you can make this decision now being fully informed about your purchasing choices. Okay, let me pop that down. Probably the other thing that I need just mention is perhaps again a little big picture sort of element is that the frozen items require energy to keep them frozen. Now if you're going to have your freezer on all the time and that's just one aspect of being in the freezer, then that might be justifiable. But if you have to turn your freezer on just for that particular one item, then the energy aspect comes into play. So think about that too. Okay, so one more thing that I need decision-wise for you to make is, do we get Australian or do we get probably overseas or international? And this is a great comparison of that. So in this container here, you have some dried beans which are Australian in origin, and you can hear them dried. So they require some preparation time. The black beans in this can, they're actually from America. And so these are fresh, so you can just simply open the can, drain them, cook them, heat them really, they're already cooked, and they can be used in your meals. So you need to make that decision as well. Is this an Australian product that you want to go with, or is it something that you want to go with that's international, that's ready to use? That decision, again, is not one I can make for you, but it's one that I encourage you to be informed about. So understand the origin of your food, and then you also can then decide, is this going to be a wasted element because the liquid in this I'm going to drain off, as opposed to no liquid in this one. However, I just want to show you the best way to prepare these. Simply put your beans in a bowl with some water and a little bit of salt and leave that overnight. And by leaving that overnight, your preparation time is much reduced. And in that way, it makes the two products much more comparable. So you can set that up in the morning, cook that when you get home for dinner, add some beautiful sauces, maybe some guacamole. There is your meal. So again, it's what suits your household. But coming back to the first point that I made at the presentation, I really just want you to be well informed so you understand international origin food, local origin food, who benefits, how to prepare, what suits your household. Okay, I think we're ready to go shopping. Okay, so here we are, shopping. So remember, you've got your list, you've got all sorts of other pieces of inspired paper and a pen to cross off your list. Or if you've got a device, hopefully you've got a delete button on your device. So what we need you to do, very importantly, it might sound crazy, but you actually need to shop from your list. So that may involve you walking past some ingredients which would otherwise be tantalising. Don't just get them because they look good. They need to be on your list. And then you need to have that fantastic delete button or that pen to mark them off. So that's the first action. You're in the supermarket, you're in the bulk food place, you're at the food co-op, you're wherever you're purchasing your ingredients from, and you're buying them from your list. Okay, so from now we need to make sure that we buy good quality. We're buying what we can afford to buy, we're buying ingredients that are in the right freshness zone. So we've talked about best before dates and use by dates. I want to just revise that. So the best before date means that there's a particular time frame in which that product is better to be consumed, but it's a bit flexible, you know, so if it goes a little bit beyond the best before, well, you may lose a bit of texture or a little bit of taste, but it'll still be able to be consumed. The use by date, on the other hand, is completely different. The use by date is way more indicative of when that particular ingredient needs to be consumed by. So what that means is you have that window of opportunity and then don't eat it after. The reason being there's a food poisoning scare, so you may not be able to smell the difference or you may not be able to taste the difference, but there's a possibility that that food will not be able to be consumed and you stay well after eating it. So make sure you know the difference so that when you're shopping, you can keep a casual eye on the used by and the best before dates. We could use this as a bit of an example. Often they're stamped on, but this one's actually printed on, and so it's indicated as the best before. So just have a look for those slightly faint sort of impressions on the products. The other thing, and I have these 2 packets of cheese here, is that when you're shopping the aisles, remember we talked about bulk food buying in terms of buying large quantities, not perhaps the methodology, but buying large quantities. So those ingredients which you might use a lot of, think about buying larger quantities of those. So if you've decided also that you're going to buy a certain volume, you've looked at your shopping list and you need, oh, I don't know, 1 kilo of cheese. Oh, just so happens I have that here. Then you may decide, or you may have some choices to have a think about. Let's see. So I have 2 1 kilo portions of cheese. This is one particular solid block of cheese, and these are slices of cheese. Now, I'd like to introduce the knowledge that the packaging in this is really detrimental to our ability to have recycling in our lives, to have reusing and repurposing in our lives. We have plastic waste times 3 in this particular style because they've actually packaged 500 grams of sliced cheese, 500 grams of sliced cheese, and then consolidated in one pack. In this instance, however, we've just got the single packaging. So while price-wise they're actually very comparable, you still, in terms of packaging, would be way better off to purchase something like this. And you know what? You can shave the cheese and make it go further. So there's your ingredient, multi-used and made extend its life. You can also grate that cheese and make all sorts of other different, you could grate it and dry it, you'd make it really fine, you can actually grate it while it is just straight out of the packet and make it quite fleshy. So you've got lots more versatility in a product like this as opposed to slices, which are just really slices. So have a think about your household use might be for your 1 kilo of cheese, and if you need a whole lot of different purposes from it, that may suffice as well. So think also about how you want to deal with that packet when you get at home. So if you're thinking about, for example, making a purchase with this, which has got the soft plastics on it, and you thinking, I'm getting this one because it's got less packaging, fantastic move, mind you, then you still may need to think about how you package this when you get it home. So you may need to slice it into chunks. You can freeze the cheese, so you may decide to freeze a portion, keep a portion for the fridge. You may even decide to share some of it with your neighbour, and in turn you might get some of their reward from their garden. So there's lots of different ways you can maximise this big block of cheese. I also want you to think about how your plastic waste is then applied or used. So there's quite a few different ways you can deal with it. One of the most common and perhaps easiest ways to deal with it is to actually consolidate all your soft plastic waste into another soft plastic bag. And a lot of the large chain supermarkets have part of a Red Cycle program. The Red Cycle program has bins located within the supermarkets, and you just simply, when you go shopping, take your disposable bags or your reusable bags rather with your soft plastic waste, and you place the soft plastic waste in your bin on the way in, and then complete your list. So that is a really achievable way of dealing with soft plastic. Okay, so we've got our shopping list, we're cruising the aisles. Now I want to take you out on a little bit of a limb. I want you to have a think about some different sort of components of shopping. And that is, how about you think about buying less diversity of ingredients? Because a lot of people say to me, you know what, I can't afford to buy everything that's on my shopping list. And that's completely understandable. And that's where you need to have a bit of a think about what ingredients are the priorities and what ingredients are in season. So think about if something's in season, particularly in a fresh fruit and vegetable context, it will more than likely be a little bit more economical to purchase. And also, it will have a whole lot of benefit to your well-being because your system is used to receiving the nutrition at that particular time of year that that particular vegetable or fruit delivers. So buying seasonally and buying more of the one thing that's seasonal and more economically achievable than buying a whole diversity of things is a really good way of making your dollar go further. I find that it works really well if you're in a garden context as well. So if, for example, I'm short of time, I may just only pick one vegetable, and that might be cabbage. And then whatever we have, that meal just has cabbage. Might be cabbage mixed with a little bit of flour and a little bit of curry. So you might make something like an okonomiyaki type pancake. Whatever it is, if I'm time poor, I visit one part of the garden. So the same sort of principle can apply in that particular shopping context as well. Another example of that might be, you might go to your cupboard and you've got, before you leave to go shopping, and you've got like tomato sauce, soy sauce, barbecue sauce. I'm going to ask, why? Like, do you really need 3 different types of sauce? I admit, look, all of them have validity and all of them have got different purposes. But maybe you have tomato sauce, and then when you finish that bottle, you get barbecue sauce. And then when you finish that one, you get soy sauce. And then when you finish that one, you go back to tomato sauce. So rather than having such diversity in your pantry, maybe in that instance, you need to actually just think about having only one thing, use it completely, and then try something different. Again, that's sort of that thinking of less diversity in our pantries. Less means more economically sound, perhaps, decision making for shopping. Okay, so I want to introduce you to different styles of shopping today as well. One of them is shopping through a bulk purchase outlet. So you don't end up perhaps with the waste that we've talked about as being an issue. You can actually purchase the items in a bulk food shopping context using the containers you might have had in your pantry. So what you can do, and the way that bulk food outlets often work, is that you can come in with your own containers and you can get them tiered off, which is simply putting them on a set of scales, measuring how much that container weighs empty, marking onto the container what it might weigh, filling it with a product. So we might look at, we've got some cranberries, some pearl barley over here. So filling that pearl barley into the particular container, then that gets weighed again, and that volume of weight is what you pay for. The other thought, and this is pretty cool too, sometimes you know when you look in your pantry and you think, oh, I've just got a little bit of that left. I don't need the whole thing. Well, that's okay, because you can go to a bulk food outlet and they'll tear it with no matter what ingredients you've still got in the remainder of the bottom of the container. Fill it up and you pay for the difference. So that can be a great way of having no packaging waste. And if you think about it, if you're clever, you'll have no food waste because you're not throwing any of the little scraps and bits and pieces out in the bottom of your container either. If you haven't got your own containers, most of the bulk food places will supply you with paper bags. And so you can use your paper bag to put whatever your purchase is. Similarly, paper, compostable, more about that in the compost presentation towards the end. Don't forget to tune in, always a good thing. So that's compostable as well. So none of that would go to landfill. You can see your paper bags as a complete asset in terms of compost making. Again, a great way to purchase. So also think about when you're at a purchasing environment, looking at the shelves that are up high and the shelves that are down low. So often you'll find particularly Australian origin products in either of those two locations. Sometimes they have to pay certain money to be at a certain place in supermarket shelves. So by looking at those different locations, you can find some good Australian quality products. The other thing is you're shopping down some aisles or in other shopping environments, you can have a look at the bins, the food bins. Sometimes they have bins that are close to use by dates or close to best before dates. Check them out. You may be able to save some money by going and visiting there. Crossing things off your list. Don't forget, they have to be on your list. The other thought that you can have is try and avoid multi-purchase items. So if, for example, they've got special deals and you might be able to buy 3 for the same price you could buy 2, but you really don't need 3. Well, you've got a few options. You can buy them, but don't waste it, because that's definitely not our thing. Don't waste it at all. But if you want to buy them, a nice way might be to give 1 packet to a food bank if you can't use it. Or maybe you could share it with a friend or a neighbour and they might be able to use it, or they might be able to give you something in return that you would equally enjoy. So there's sort of some sharing and some community building that can happen out of that. But certainly, if you don't need it and you can't think of any other way, you need to be strong and you need to walk on past. Be strong. It's not easy necessarily. All right, so let's have a look at another little strategy of mine, which is to make sure that you think about your, I'm going to call them origin ingredients. So for me, origin ingredients when I cook are things like legumes and beans and grains, and all of those, if I purchase those, and I often get them from a bulk food place, I can make them so many things. I can make them flour, I can make them meal, I can use them as they're intended as a whole. I can grind them up and make them into a paste, make them into like a tahini. So there's a whole range of different things you can make just because I bought that basic origin ingredient, as opposed to buying something that was quite processed. The cost of origin ingredients is often also really good value. So it's also good to be mindful that it's quite economically rewarding to purchase those style of ingredients. Let's have a look at this as an example. I'm just going to turn my little induction on. Okay, so one example I've got of that is that is this falafel mix, which you can purchase at a supermarket. It's got chickpeas as a base, herbs, spices, almond meal, all of those. So you can buy that as a complete mix, or you can make your own. So I'm just going to put these in here. These little purple falafels are actually some I've made myself. They're purple because they're beetroot. So these ones I know the exact ingredients in there. I know that, I'm just going to turn that down. Let me see. I know that those chickpeas are used as an origin ingredient, so I bought them in bulk. I've got the herbs that I've grown at home. I've got lemon that I've grown from home. I've got some of the almonds that I purchased in bulk as an origin ingredient, whole almonds with their skins on and everything. And a few spices that I would have purchased in bulk. Amazing. So I know all of the ingredients in that particular recipe and I can read them off the packet here, but I can only make falafels with this falafel mix, as opposed to what I've done is when buying the origin ingredients, I now can make all sorts of things with my leftover chickpeas, all sorts of things with my leftover almonds, all sorts of things with my spices and my herbs. So it gives you so much more creativity and flexibility in a cooking context if you shop for origin ingredients. Again, with an Australian origin focus, less packaging, so much win. So we're totally in using all of our food that we've got because we're using it, I'm just going to turn these over, in such diverse ways. great examples of being able to be creative in the kitchen, which is also fun for someone like me. But if you're not such a cook, then certainly you might like to go for this pre-packaged, which certainly has a place in some kitchens. All right, so probably the last few things I just want to leave you with is when you're walking out of your supermarket, when you're walking out of the door, one of the things you need to think about as they're packaging everything into your reusable bags, how about you put the items that you've purchased in common groups according to where you're going to put them in your pantry or in your cupboards or in your space. Let me turn these down. That'll be great for lunch for later. So what you can do is you can make sure that all your cold items are together, or your freezer items are together, all your dry pantry items are together. And that way, when it comes to taking the items out of the car and unpacking them, you just know that bag goes there, that one there. And you can co-opt to the other people in your household and say, you're unpacking, thank you very much. So that's another thought. And another one is, it's amazing how much you can save by actually growing a few items on your own. These might be some herbs for flavouring, some parsley, some chives, some oregano. Fantastic for flavouring your cooking, and that will save you a lot of money. So if we go back to your origin ingredient type of thinking, again, if you use some of those herbs, you can turn those origin ingredients into an amazing array of different dishes. In doing that, you also know that you're picking only what you need, and so you're not wasting. There's no food waste in that way. You actually just pick a few handfuls because that's all you need at that point. Again, no food waste, which of course is our big mantra. So we've been shopping, we've unpacked, we're unpacking our pantry. I think the next one you need to have a look at, next presentation that I would advise you have a look at, is the pantry and storage version. So again, we're maximising the ingredients that we buy or minimising food waste. Really important in all the actions that we undertake. All those respectful notions that we talked about earlier in this presentation apply right across. So thank you very much for today. Thank you for having a go at shopping with a conscious mind. Have a great day.